here with Irish Rugby Sevens Bryan Mollen, and we are obviously here chatting about your Sevens career and everything that's kind of transpired over the last sort of month or so. I think it was 3 weeks ago, roughly 3, 4 weeks ago now, with the IRFU's decision to step back from the full funding of the Sevens program. So obviously, no better man to chat about it. So Bryan, thanks for your time today, and yeah, great to have you on the call. So I guess let's peel it all back. So how did your sort of, I guess let's call it love affair with sevens come about, right? Because former Blackrock College
Yeah.
standout, and then how did the sevens come about for yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Phil. I wouldn't know if I'm a standout back then in Blackrock. I think I kind of peaked maybe a little bit later in my career. I suppose my first ever taste of sevens was growing up in Australia and going to school there. Family lived in Canberra. We went to Canberra Grammar School. And I suppose there you play all different sorts of rugby. You're playing 15s, you're playing sevens, you're playing 10s. So little tournaments there was my first little taste, but very minimal level. I suppose it really kicked off. The IRFU hosted kind of trials back in 2015 to kind of kickstart their men's program. It hadn't existed before then. I actually applied for those trials, but I was sitting exams at the time, so I had to miss them. And at that time, I was just playing my rugby with Trinity in the AIL, so playing 20s and seniors. Um, in must have been about October 2016, around then. I got asked would I got invited to come to a camp with the Irish Sevens. Back then we were doing weekend camps, basically once every few weeks, maybe 3 4 weeks, you'd have a weekend camp, a Saturday and Sunday, a kind of training schedule off the back of it when the AAL kind of rested. So it kind of worked out well. Got invited to one of those through my coach in Trinity, Tony Smead, and somehow they saw something in me and been going ever there since. So we signed our first contracts back in, I believe, the summer of 2017. So almost 9 10 months later, and since then we've kind of been a full-time program.
That's phenomenal, yeah. And I mean, you talk about the full-time program there. So to give sort of people an idea of how the sevens program operates full time. So you were training at the high performance center, I take it primarily, and then so what would an average week look like for you, say, in a non-tournament week, and then what would it look like in a tournament week?
Yeah, so full-time meaning we're in there most day, not every single day. Do got a rest day. So when we're at home, we're in Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Most days consist of a pitch session and a gym session. So on pitch rugby session, it could be a variety of different things: speed, skills, high intensity rugby, low intensity, more detail based, and then a gym session, which is your normal gym sessions. Some days we do a double pitch. We need to get higher meters into legs, or trying to focus more on rugby. But we get our 4 days in the week, and you have your Wednesday off and your weekend off to, I suppose, enjoy and also recover, which is a big priority in the game. It flips slightly then to a tournament week. I suppose you have two different tournaments. You either have a 3 day tournament where you play Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or you have a 2 day tournament which is a Saturday, Sunday. A 2 day tournament's a bit more compact. You end up playing 3 games each day, or 3 and 2, depending how you finish. And then the 3 day tournaments, usually 2 games a day. So a bit lesser intensity, but longer, drawn out. So then our week kind of works backwards from that. You'd have a captain's run the day before tournament day, whichever one that falls on, a day off, usually before that, and then a couple of days training, which is it's exact same model as what we follow at home. Would be a pitch session and also a gym session later that day. And we usually try get it done ideally in around the same time. So kind of get up, get moving, get into our pitch sessions, go kind of straight into our gym or around about that time, not leave too big gap, and then you kind of get your afternoons off to recover, go out for coffee, or just go see the sights, whichever city we're in, which is always a nice way to do it. So you kind of get that mix of a bit of the travel, being abroad, and also obviously focusing on our training, ready to perform then for the weekend.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's really interesting. Obviously, I guess the non like tournament weeks are very similar to what the provinces would probably be doing in terms of everyone gets the days off in the week and how it works. And then obviously the tournament week is completely different because you've got quite a bit of travel. You're going around the world in different sort of positions. So I guess when it comes to where we got to with the sevens program with the IRFU, that they cited financial issues as a key reason for stepping back from the program. But I dare say, without getting too deep into the weeds, that sort of reasoning has perhaps been a bit debunked recently in terms of when you just look at the numbers to run a sevens program, as opposed to obviously, the provinces and the men's national team bring in most of the money. But there, when you look at the sevens program, it didn't look like it would necessarily need to be the biggest thing taken off to save money. I know it's a tough economic climate. So could you, if you're comfortable to talk about the finances of a sevens program, how much it costs to run a sevens program, say per season, and how much of that is coming from the IRFU and how much of it is coming from other sources?
Yeah, and I'm sure in the media everybody's seen different figures, and it's kind of hard to get an exact gauge. I suppose it's without giving exact numbers that may be slightly incorrect. So we don't get a chance to look at exact financial statements or anything like that. But no, I think you're right in saying it isn't a huge cost, which is why it's so surprising. Now, the reasons behind it being saying that it's tough economic climate and the whole business, which it is at the end of the day, the IRFU as a business needs to make cutbacks, and the sevens not being in the, I suppose, the strategic plans of the IRFU, and where they see the game going at the moment. That was a reason they made a big cut there. It wasn't, I don't think it was a short sighted decision. I think it was planned a while back and it just kind of filtered through. But what the IRFU pay out, I mean, it costs in the Olympic year, which is one of the most expensive years. Obviously, we had a lot more contracted players. We did a lot more to try chase success in Paris. The men's program, I believe, cost 2.1 million. It's not solely to the IRFU. Obviously, you have sponsors, you have Sport Ireland throw a lot of it, and other different things. So the IRFU kind of fall into that bracket. It is their general costs, I believe, are less than 500,000 per year for the men's sevens to be run, and that's for a company of that size and for I suppose a union that does have that much money within the banks, so to speak. That's where it was really surprising that you couldn't, I suppose, find a way of making it still work. We didn't see it, especially as players or as a sevens group, didn't see it as a huge financial cost for such a big company. But I also don't have access to financial reports or anything like that. That the reviews they did, unfortunately, because I think that would. Well, we've asked from them to see it, but obviously they're holding their cards a bit close to their chest. Is that would show a lot more, I think, and a bit more of an understanding as if they are making cuts to us, are they making cuts around the board? Where's the money going that they're saving from us? All those different things, I suppose, is where it's kind of harder to understand the decision that's been made.
Yeah, it's strange that there's sort of a lack of transparency on that because if you're making such a financial decision where you're affecting, not just the players, but the coaches, all the stuff that go into it and everything like that, it does seem that there isn't, they've kind of gone A to Z without explaining everything in between to everybody as to exactly why that's the route they've gone for saving money. And again, we can't. It's a tough economic climate, as you say, on all of that. But I guess the roundabout thing, which was very interesting, what you said there, the strategic process of the IRFU, and that they don't see sevens fitting into that. From your opinion, perhaps more than anything else, what exactly is it that the IRFU were hoping to get out of it? Because are they looking at it solely in the prism that sevens needs to feed the 15s program, or are they looking at it as, it could be a standalone thing to go win an Olympic medal? What was the feedback you were given on that, or if you were given feedback on that?
I think what they really wanted from it in an ideal world was more of a feeder through to the 15s. Now, it has been that, and I know you constantly see the same names being thrown around about guys who've been in the program, and whether they were in for a very short period of a couple of weeks or in for a couple of months or even a couple of years, and then have gone on to play 15s or have also just had another chance at least life. I personally see it as a way bigger development tool I think that can be used. I mean, I constantly harp on about how good the sevens game is for individual skills. Now, I understand, and I think everyone understands it's not going to suit every 15s player. We're not going to have front rows, second rows playing sevens game. But for over half a squad in a 15s team, the sevens game would actually benefit them somehow. So why not use it for academy guys or sub academy guys sitting in Ireland who essentially at the end of the day, they might get very little game time with their provinces, but they end up playing All Ireland League, which is great and strengthens that. But is it really benefiting them to actually get better? Why not send them to the sevens for a few months? You can do 6 month sabbaticals almost in a way. Go play it, go travel the world a little bit, go make your skills better, and then come back to the game when maybe I don't know when your senior players are away and you need more play or you need more people at the training sessions or different things like that. I feel like there is ways to see it as a big development tool. And I think that's the way sort of other unions do it. But what they really wanted, I think, was to see more people coming through the program to go play 15s. Now, it's very hard to do when you only have, I mean, this year we had a squad of 13, 14 players. One or two came back from 15s. We're not going to get 6, 7 guys signed into contracts in the provinces in Ireland. The player pool is too big and there's not enough teams for people to play in at a professional level. Last year at the Olympics, we have 3 guys who came with us to the Olympics who've gone on to the 15s out of what I believe is 24, 25 who were contracted or who were in the training squad leading up to the Olympics. I think that's a pretty good percentage of playing population. I don't know exact numbers, but if you count it as maybe sub academy, academy guys, the percentage there that go through into senior game, I know it's very high in Leinster, but in the other provinces, is it as high as that? I don't know. So I just think that's where it's a little bit short-sighted. That this sevens game is a separate game. It has little bits to it, but it can be used as a development tool for the 15s game. I mean, it can only make people better. It's only made me better as a player. My skills, I'd like to say were okay when I first started playing, but they've definitely become way better. I'm way confident of a rugby player, see things differently, and it's just an experience. I mean, I take last weekend as the URC, for example, and Leinster playing at home, and I think the crowd was somewhere between 10 to 15,000 in the Aviva. Like we get that in the sevens tournament at a very low level. Like we go to Hong Kong, there's 35,000 people at the stadium. It's round full. That builds a different kind of atmosphere and pressure to it as well. And I suppose you have to learn to be able to cope with that. Why not experience that for young guys and get a feeling of it so that when they then have to come back and play in different environments, they have that under their belt, and it's only a learning. You'll also get to play against a bunch of different countries and different experiences of how different people play the game. I mean, we come up against, you always talk about Fijians. No one knows exactly the structure they play rugby, but you have to defend or you have to play the game a slightly different way to what you would against, say, a South Africa or something like that. So I think everything about the game just will make players better. And you will always find a couple gems. It's not going to be everyone, but there's so much potential within the game that I suppose for younger guys coming through, that's the real shame that they won't ever be given that chance. And now you only have the 4 provinces to really go to. And speaking to guys, younger guys in the 7 squad who obviously want to continue playing on their career and want to chase the professional dream, they're now looking to try get into academies and academies in different provinces. There's no spots for them. It's all filled up. It's been filled up months ago. So where do you, all of a sudden you have probably 8 to 10 guys, very talented, still learning their game and developing, and now all of a sudden don't get that chance anymore. They're just completely finished. And I think that's where the real shame is. Like I said, I started back in 2016. I've had 9 years of this program. What I've got to see and what I've got to enjoy has been incredible and life-changing. But it's a real shame that I can't keep this program going for guys who are 18, 19, 20-year-olds now who might chase the next Olympics in LA, or even the ones after that in Brisbane in 32. Like that could be their goal. They might not know that yet, but that could be the pathway they might end up being single, double, triple Olympians, which I think is a club within sport that's very, very rare. So why not give these people the chance to do something? You're only going to get a certain amount of players that are going to be Irish 15s internationals. That's just the way it goes. In an ideal world, you'd have way, way more, but that is the top level of the game. Sorry. Why not give people a different chance to wear a different kind of green jersey? And I think that's just what's being missed.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. There's a lot to dive into on that. So, if it's okay, I'll sort of phase a few questions in that. I really want to.
Sorry.
No, bro, that's absolutely brilliant, mate. It's fantastic. It's great, and you can see the passion there that you have in it. And like you said, you've been in the program the best part of a decade, right? So it's like you said, it's the next generation too that this is also costing them. It's not just the current squad. I'll come back to what you said about playing in the atmosphere because that's really interesting, and it ties into a wider point with the whole situation with Ireland and Seven. So I'll come back to that in a second. In terms of the pathway system, is there a trick being missed there? Because the argument of players not going into 15s doesn't hold water when you look at the players who have gone into 15s. As you said, as a percentage of the squad that does go on to play 15s, the numbers are exactly what you'd expect them to be. I mean, you're not going to get every player to go, and it's not uniquely Ireland. I mean, you look at different countries in South Africa that you've got the likes of Cheslin Colby, players like that, who I think in reality, Cheslin Colby, who's gone on to be one of the best players of all time, could well have been lost to 15-a-side rugby had it not been for sevens. So
No,
I get
he was forgotten about. He
yeah,
was
exactly. I remember just my own background. I grew up in Cape Town, and I remember they were trying to shift him to scrum half. They were trying to see where they could get him in. They couldn't fit him in, and he's a double World Cup winning winger now. So you see at that point, Quacka Smith, another player who in the South African setup was too small to be a back row, would have definitely been lost had it not been for sevens. So. I guess the point I'm trying to come across is you've hit on that. We've got four provinces in Ireland. There's not enough playing time to go around for every player coming through, in particular in Leinster. As you said, that could there not be a situation where the pathways are looked at where each province designates, I don't know, five players from, their wider squad who are eligible for the sevens who can then filter back in as and when needed? Is there not a way of if the IRFU are hell bent on one tying it into being a 15-a-side feeder, then make it a 15-a-side feeder and get players from the academies? But on a wider point, could they not designate, say five special athletes? You look at the US with Carlin Isles, Perry Baker. If we're struggling to find athletes outside of traditional rugby circles, is there not a route there for that too? So I guess it's kind of a two-pronged question in terms of could there not be more alignment with the provinces that the provinces dedicate players per season who are eligible to go on the sevens and then come back if the province needs them. And then if they're looking for athletes outside of it, if you've got a very talented GAA player looking to move across, I would argue, like you said, to get a fast track on how you build all your 15 skills, seven's the way to go. One-on-one tackling, space coverage, all of that sort of thing. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that point, and then we'll come back to the other.
Yeah, I could think it definitely need. I think that's the way it should go, and that the provinces buy into it. I also think that is a problem. We over years we've heard about. I think it's just an uneducated. Sorry, the guys are uneducated about it. So guys in academies, sub academies, they see the only pathway as being the 15s game. If they're not sitting in their province holding pads or training, doing little sessions, all these little things, all of a sudden they're not going to be seen by senior coaches. They're not going to be given a chance to represent whatever province they're in. So I suppose a learning there, and whether it works with the senior people in the academy or down a level at the academy or at the academy level or the sub academy, absolutely. I think you pick players within that and you send them across and be like, you go develop your skills, come back when there's whatever A games on or different things, and you rotate that a little bit. I know the model was supposed to be kind of similar to that. The IRFU were trying to roll out post Olympics this year. Obviously, it was going to be a 4-year development plan to the next Olympics. And what they wanted to do is have, I suppose, a core squad of whatever be 5, 6 guys who are full-time sevens, and then from there pull guys in from different academies, maybe needing game time or needing to up their skills or different things at different levels. and that's your 7 squad then for the year, and it kind of rotate through that. So it gives guys a bit of an opportunity, but you also have, I suppose, a small core group that's I need to drive the game and play the game and kind of lead it, because you'll be lost without that. I don't think any program works where you only have just 15 players dripping in and out. I think you need to have that core system. France is a very good model of kind of how they did it for the Olympic year. I know for a fact they had their core 7 squad, and they said to every top 14 team, and they kind of made a list of guys they wanted to potentially get into training at some point. So they were pulling guys out of academies and top 14 teams that they thought would be good for the sevens in a build up to the Olympic year. So they'd trial them for a month or two or a couple months, then send them back and kind of make a list of, okay, we want this guy, we don't want this guy, and then kind of bring them back and forth, especially when they weren't playing the 15s game. I think something like that would absolutely work. You get the best of both worlds, where you have a 7 program that is thriving. Young guys are getting a chance to represent it, and then within that, there's young guys as well developing their skills to be put back into the 15s model. It's so you're being told you're not going to sevens. That's the end of your 15s career. You're going there to develop your skills, work on these 1, 2, 3 things we want you to focus on. We'll be watching. We're keeping an eye on you, keeping tabs. You'll come back to us in a couple of months, and hopefully you progress from there, and then we'll go back into the 15s game. I think that would make sense, and I don't see why that would be an issue. I know what caused a few issues this year was World Rugby changing their game a little bit, which meant the IRFU changed their, I suppose, their views on how they were planning to structure the game within Ireland. But it's very hard to develop a sevens game without the pathway underneath it. I mean, there's no schools competition. There's no under 18s. There's no under 19s. Oh, sorry, there was an under 18s that got cut as well this year. So there's no opportunity for kids to play rugby. I mean, I've been in conversations with schools. We've tried to get tournaments up and running. Some we had backing from the IRFU and different things, and some we didn't. But then at the end of the day, when there was so much uncertainty, they were just like, "Oh, what's the point?" And dead right. I mean, why would schools send their kids to a tournament somewhere around Ireland with a bunch of different kids that there's nothing to lead into? There's no national team to then go to afterwards. But I think it's a way to start. Why not have a 16s tournament for 4th years or 5th years, and then I suppose leave 6th years out of it, let them study on their exams, and then do a sub academy tournament or something like that. And you can drip feed in a senior guy from the sevens team to every group or something like that, where you can kind of get a bit more of a learning. But I think it really stems from an education piece to the provinces to know that this game is actually beneficial. Like you see it in Australia and New Zealand, that they work together, and there's guys coming through both. Guys go to the sevens game for a couple of years to develop, and then they come back to their provinces or their Super Rugby teams or whatever, to then get to go into the 15s game. It's by no means is it this is what you're going to do for life. For some people it might be, but for the vast majority, they need to be able to say, go there for a while and then come back.
Yeah, it's really interesting that, because I guess it's like you said, it almost feels like we're looking at the finish line without sort of putting a start, middle, and end to everything into it in terms of the schools program and everything like that. I know, for example, in South Africa, we played sevens tournaments with schools, 4, 5, sevens tournaments a year. It's such a big part of it, and it's how you intertwine that into the DNA, I guess, of everything. On that, it's just one point you touched on there about you need a core group, which is so obvious. It makes such sense, like when you say it out like that. In your estimation, what would be the minimum number of core group players that the sevens program like could operate on with, as we touched on, players coming in from the provinces for various different competitions, so that one, we definitely ensure that there is results in some sort of consistency of a core group, and then two, that when those players do come in from the academies, they are actually learning and developing, and they're not coming into it all being thrown together every tournament starting fresh.
I think you have a number of about 5, 6, 7 you'd be able to get
Mm,
away with. I mean, you
okay.
send a squad of 13 to a team or to a group, half that being experienced sevens players. They kind of lead the play at any time. You're probably going to have 3 or 4 of them on a pitch. So you have maybe 3 or 4 of them outside that. And to be honest, every player we've had come in can play rugby. So it's not about teaching them basic skills, how to do it. It's maybe just learning a little bit the nuances of the game, a little do's and don'ts. But guys pick that up very quickly as well. So I don't think you need, for example, 10 guys and you can only bring in one or two. I think you can literally do it half and half almost. And as long as guys coming in are willing to learn and willing to give it a go, I think you can make anything work.
Yeah, no doubt. And in terms of from the player's perspective, in terms of you've obviously you and your teammates have had meetings with the IRFU. Have things like this been proposed, and have there been, or is it just been the gate shot, we can't talk about it sort of thing? We've made our decision.
Yeah, so we didn't really get, obviously, the way the announcement came out and different things, we didn't really get much of a heads up. And like I said about the path or the ideal way the sevens was going to be structured for the next 4 years with that kind of core group and academy guys coming in and out. That got pushed aside a good few months ago, kind of the start of the season after World Rugby. We were making some changes, but since then, no, we very limited conversations, very limited insight into what the thoughts were and how things were maybe shaping up from the IRFU, which is what made it really hard as well. I suppose afterwards, kind of thinking, had they not told us maybe 12 months ago, this is the way it's trending, we're not going to fund the program. Could you look for external funding? And giving it back to the onus on us, we might have been able to find something. But the fact that, like you said, 3-4 weeks ago, program's done and then it's just finished. It's very hard to, I suppose, fight that in any way. We had a couple meetings where we got to ask questions about different things, and we tried asking a lot of questions and maybe got a bit hostile at different environments, but very much hidden in the case of this is financial decision and everything they've stated in without going into too much detail. So no, there was lacked communication, which I suppose made things hard, but it was also difficult the fact that World Rugby were taking so long to make their decision on what the sevens game was looking like going forward. So kind of meant the union could wait until that was done to then process the decision and kind of put it on World Rugby's decision after the back of it.
Yeah, so one last point on the IRFU, because we'll kind of go to World Rugby. Actually, 2 points on IRFU. Firstly, um, one is there been a trick missed with having an event in Dublin. Feels like a perfect city to have a sevens event. It's a hotspot for tourists want to go see. The way the stadiums are placed, whether you play, you probably play it at the Aviva, I take it. I mean, it's built for rugby. It'd be a perfect venue for it. There's been other stadiums around the place where, it's a bit out of the city or whatever like that. But, the Aviva smack bang in the middle of Dublin. One, is that a trick being missed? And why is that not sort of happened? Why have they not pushed forward with that? And then two, in terms of the IRFU with the sevens program, given it's an Olympic sport, were they not beholden to, Sport Ireland? Is there not some agreement there that they can't just cut a program and other stakeholders involved? What was their sort of response? So I guess let's start with that one. The Sport Ireland and other stakeholders. What was the process with that?
Yeah, so I suppose it's kind of a funny one because obviously we're IRFU the whole time, and then we come to Team Ireland at Olympic time. So it's, yes, Sport Ireland give us funding, but we're under, I suppose, the IRFU bubble. So at the end of the day, if they want to make the decision to cut it, they can. Different stakeholders obviously are very upset and annoyed. I don't think they were given the correct amount of time for a warning or that said this is actually going to happen. Now, there was a bit of talk throughout the year, like I said, the same way that things might change, but by no way, shape, or means was it going to be the end of a program. For some of them who've put a lot of money into us as a game, this is the game they want to invest in. They don't want to invest in the 15s game, so to see it kind of gone is a real shame. But yeah, from what I can gather is that under the IRFU, technically they can, I suppose, make a decision on anything that fits under their umbrella.
Yeah, interesting. It seems just so strange that, because what are they going to do a year out from the Olympics? Put back a program and hope for success? It doesn't seem to be a high performance sort of drive towards winning an Olympic medal. But I guess it ties back into that. Doesn't seem like it's the IRFU's primary goal, which is
Yeah,
interesting.
and I think that's the main point that we got out of it is we asked what is the IRFU goal and where are they
Mm.
putting everything they want to, I suppose, invest in. And their two answers was, and the women's game, which is obviously thriving and constantly driving up, which needs continuous investment, got a World Cup and all this kind of thing going forward. And then the second thing was the men's development game, which is academies and schools level. Obviously, they see it within Leinster and Dublin that things are very good. You have a thriving school system and you have an academy that's very successful. But in the other three provinces, you really don't. And that's where they see it as a massive problem. And they don't see, because the men's 15s game is the one that brings in the money and drives success for the whole business, that the real pathway for that being the schools and the academies, that's the way they need to go with the funding and making sure that's up to scratch. And then can they, I suppose, look at other alternatives after that.
Yeah, interesting that, I guess. Yeah, just seems strange to cut down one pathway to, yeah, cutting out another avenue for potential athletes. But
Yes,
I guess,
that's
yeah,
that. I suppose that's the hard thing to really understand. And that's the thing we were trying to ask questions: is how do you see the difference between the two? And you kind of, I suppose, give an answer that doesn't really answer everything, and then you kind of try to ask the same question a slightly different way,
sure.
a different answer.
Yeah,
You don't really get it either. So it's
no,
just at the end of the day, we just went round and round and roundabouts, and there's in the meetings just like, oh, almost
no,
what's
that
the point of asking these questions anymore?
makes sense. Yeah, so I guess going back to the not having a Dublin stop for the World Series, is that not a trick missed in terms of we're talking about finances, bringing finances into the IRFU? How would that have looked? What's the process? If you know the process of that, how does that go about? How did you?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's a trick missed.
Yeah.
I think, and we've been saying it ever since we got onto not even onto the World Series, since we started playing in Europe as a core group back in 2017, 18, when we kind of had a kind of solid group that were talking about. We said, why not stick a tournament here and start with the Rugby Europe tournament? Now, I know for a lot of these, it's an you have to fork out obviously the money, so the IRFU would have to pay for it. A lot of the host unions do have to pay a lot of money to host events. Don't get as much funding from it, but I think with Dublin and the way it goes and the way rugby's so big here and where you have something situated, I think it could make enough money from it to cover that, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So in a lot of other countries around the world and even within Europe, you venues or host cities would invest in it and maybe not make the returns on it, but they understand that. Whereas other ones, like the huge ones, like the Hong Kongs, Dubai's, they go off a bit better, but they pack out stadiums and different things. So I suppose maybe it was too big a risk to take. I think we had different conversations over the years of why not do it. It was kind of looked at a little bit of we'll see what we can do. I know for the World Series, it's kind of like the old system was you almost bid for it and you put in the kind of bid for it to have a host city. I know Ireland was in talks to host that last leg when it went to Madrid, which that'd be two seasons ago.
Mhm.
But it obviously never came through. And I don't know where it fell through. Was it a cost thing? Was it at the end of the day the wrong decision? But I think, yeah, a sevens tournament in Dublin would have been incredible. If they said the Aviva was too much, stick it in the RDS. Use the whole outdoor area as a fan zone for families, kids, adults. Obviously, keep the beer tents flowing, make it a real party. Enjoy. You have pubs all around it, hotels around it that people be staying in. It's got to be a boost for the economy with knowing Ireland, the amount of alcohol that will be served. It's got to be beneficial in some way. And I think it'd just be really enjoyable. It'd be a new experience that they haven't really seen. A chance for players to play at home, which we don't ever get. So yeah, massive trick missed. And I think that's one of those things that would grow the game as well. I mean, you go to these far corners of the world to showcase sevens to grow the game. because they don't have a thriving sevens or a thriving 15. So why not show them the kind of the easier game to understand and the quicker pace? You don't have to concentrate for as long. There's not as many tactical decisions with it. And for maybe some people, that's the same in Ireland. So why not let them see it, host an event, stick both men's and women's in it, and let it take off. And you can always try it for a year and two, make an investment. If you lose, you're not going to lose millions and millions off it. You're going to use a couple thousand, I'd imagine, or tens of thousands, which at the end of the day, investments from a big company, that's, I don't see that as a whole lot of money. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's me being short-sighted, but yeah, no, it's definitely something that I think should have been done. And it was a huge trick missed on behalf of the IRFU and I suppose Irish rugby as a whole.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess that's one of the arguments people have made is that, if you're playing in LA, for example, the time zones and things like that, people might not see the sevens team as much as they could. So, I mean, why not bring it closer to home? But I guess that kind of leads to the next thing. I'm sorry, I'm conscious. I know I'm holding quite a long time. It's just very interesting, which is great. In terms of, could you kind of break down, firstly, how the series worked in its original format, and then two, what World Rugby did? Because I think a lot of people aren't clear on exactly what happened with the split. Was it last season just gone as to, how World Rugby essentially took, was it the top six teams? They
Yeah.
moved. Yeah. So if you could just break down firstly how the series originally worked, what happened last season, and whether that tied into part of the IRFU's thinking.
Yeah, so the original season or the original seven series before COVID consisted of men's would go to 10 legs all around the world. It's 5 back-to-back tournaments stemming from December to May, June time. And that would be, and just be a straight table. The winner of did the best over the 10 league or 10 tournaments was, I suppose, series champion. The women then played, I think it was 6 or 7 tournaments. So they're on less. Some were at the same venue, but most of them weren't. They kind of had their own series. Post COVID, then obviously a lot of financial difficulties. The game slightly changed. I can't remember exactly the first year we had, but anyway, the model changed where we'd go to kind of 8 tournaments, some back to back and some standalone, and the women would join in as well. So you kind of play both sets of tournaments would be at the same venue, which made obviously trying to bring the game all together at one point. It then slightly changed to last year again, where we had 7 tournaments with a grand finale at the end, which was Madrid. And you kind of had 6 tournaments throughout the year that led to kind of a series champion. And then you had one standalone tournament at the end that was a world championship, essentially, the way it looked. That had a promotion relegation in it. So last year we had 12 teams on it. The bottom 4 would sit with the top 4 of the challenger and they'd play off, and then 4 would come up. So you still had 12. That then changed again to this year. And I hope I haven't lost anyone at this stage. But this year we ended up with, I believe, 6 tournaments: Dubai, Cape Town, Perth, Vancouver, LA, and Hong Kong. So we had 7. With LA being a grand finale then. So it's 6 regular season tournaments, half which had 12 teams on it. Halfway through or towards the end of the season, World Rugby said that next year's season format is only going to be the top 8 teams. So that automatically takes away promotion relegation for lower teams, and it also meant that automatically 4 series teams were dropped off. How that then look is, so going into this next season coming forward, you're going to have a World Series, which is going to be 8 teams sitting at the top bracket. Underneath that, you're going to have what's called a Sevens 2 or a second division, which is going to have 6 teams on it, which is made up of some of the World Series teams that dropped off from last season and also some of the teams that have come up from the Challenger. The way they wanted to shape it is that they'll play 2 separate leagues. By the end of the year, they'll then play, I suppose, a kind of world championship round robin, 3 tournaments, and then the top 8 teams from that will be safe to go on to the following year. How that meant this year that's just gone was that we had unfortunately a very poor year as an Irish team. and we were sitting bottom of the table for a whole host of different reasons. That it's another lengthy conversation. But we didn't really have anything to really fight. So we kind of knew we'd be down the bottom half. So we'd be what we thought was going to be the promotion relegation. So we kind of knew we parked the series a little bit and kind of thought when it came to LA, the grand finale, we would then be playing against the top four of the Challenger Series in 8-team playoff, and the top four teams of that would be safe for the World Series the following. As that changed and World Rugby made the decision they were going to cut the whole system, we then knew we were going to only fighting for, I suppose, a 7-2 bracket, the second division, because the top 8 had already been sewed up, and we knew we couldn't get there. How that then played, I think, for the IRFU, knowing that we'd be on a bottom tier, and also probably reduced viewership, and we weren't guaranteed to qualify for that either. In LA, we lost our matches, so unfortunately, we didn't qualify for the second division. I think that only made the decision easier for the IRFU. It just meant that we'd obviously dropped off so significantly. They're seen as, okay, we can just kind of disband the program. I don't think it actually would have changed had we stayed on the World Series or qualified for the second division. I think they would have, I suppose, cut the program anyway. But it just would have been harder to face with media and different things to take a team off the World Series directly or take a team that's only trying to qualify for different levels. That might have been a very roundabout way of trying to explain what's happened over the years. But essentially, the World Rugby are seeing it as a huge financial cost. The sevens game, they don't make any money off it. So it's trying to find a model that suits that. The only shameful thing was that this year they left it so late. We found out it was officially confirmed, I think it was 2 weeks before LA, that the top 8 was safe and the bottom 4 were going to go try play off for a second division. So how can you decide a program, or how can you even plan for that when the season's over at that stage? So that was, I think, really poor from World Rugby. And they've known the sevens game has been a financial issue for years and years, ever since COVID. So I don't see it as a case of they had to make this decision all of a sudden this year. This could have been planned years in the past, and actually put a model in place and a bit of an understanding saying this is going to happen in 2 years' time if things don't change. So then everyone knows. But every union, every player I was speaking to in different meetings around the world, we're like, we're all just a shock. We don't know what's going on. No one has any idea. World Rugby weren't really telling anyone. But I think then at the end of the day, I suppose, since that all happened, it kind of put all the cards on the table for the IRFU. That we were going down, we weren't competing, we were falling off the series, we fell off 7-2. It's like, okay, well, an easy way is just to close the door on it all.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems mad. It's like Ulster and Connacht not making the Champions Cup. Let's just cut them. It's just so, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just. I know that's a drastic comparison, but I mean, you're just for clarity for people watching this who might not have followed the sevens as much. Ireland are just a season removed from finishing second on the series. Am I correct? It was 23-24, wasn't it?
Yeah. So last year, leading up to the Olympics, we finished with 2 points off Argentina at the end, and we. I played in the final, made a mistake myself, and it might have cost us. But those kind of things like that, you win that game, your series champions, which is a first ever. We're the only team last year, that whole year, we're the most consistent team. So the only team to ever make every single quarterfinal throughout the year. No other team did it. We started to peak at the right times, made a couple finals. Silver medals, unfortunately, another couple bronzes. So yeah, extremely competitive. Everyone was kind of in a way, we don't want to play Ireland because we were just so consistent. We didn't have dips in tournaments.
That showed in the Olympics too, with how I mean, it was one from my end. I'm obviously a bit biased. It was one missed decision against Fiji that cost you moving through the next, to the semi-finals, and Fiji obviously pushed France all the way in the final. That's the margins we're talking about. For again, I'm just trying to paint a picture here for people who might not have watched enough sevens to understand how competitive the league is, and to explain how impressive the consistency you guys showed across a full series is, because it's not like playing in the URC, right? Like if you drop two games in the URC, it could, could affect, fourth and fifth or whatever, which is important. But if you drop a couple of tournaments in the sevens, it's very difficult to then be consistent enough to win the series. To explain where you guys were basically having a big battle with Argentina all season, I think Argentina won a few competitions, which in the end proved to be the difference. But it's that sustained excellence across a full year, which is what makes sevens so captivating. Again, I'm a big follower of sevens, so I really enjoy watching it and tracking where you guys are. So I guess for a new audience, just watching sevens, it's impressive that you can play a tournament in LA and sit, 4 months later play a tournament on the other end of the earth, and you still have to be as consistent across all that time
Yeah,
to
yeah,
peak.
that's the which when World Rugby originally changed to the 12 team format. I mean, every player was like, "Oh my god, this is going to get competitive," because all
Oh
of a
yeah,
sudden you didn't have, not being unfair, but lower end teams where
sure.
Kiwis or Fijis could beat them by 50 points. Now,
Yeah,
it still happened occasionally, but that was kind of bounced. Everything would just go their favor, or like we'd win big games, and that was just because everything clicked that exact game. But every other game, and that's why they brought in, I suppose, a losing bonus point structure as well, because every game was finishing within a score. And for anyone who's seen a game of sevens, that is literally, I mean, the bounce of a ball.
sure.
And that is just one bounce into one person's hand and it bang, he's gone the length, and it's game set match. And that can mean, because it was so competitive, that can honestly mean the difference. You could be sitting second in your pool, guaranteed a quarterfinal, to finishing last to all of a sudden be knocked out. What that means then on a point structure in the standings is huge. All of a sudden then for the tournaments, you're trying to chase that and trying to get back up because it's so hard to do. So for us to make a quarterfinal every tournament was unbelievable. We set out to win tournaments and different things, and that didn't happen. But I think we're so proud of the fact that we could achieve that consistent excellency throughout the season. And like I said, it's not an easy thing to do, and especially when you go, some tournaments are back to back, so you play one weekend, the Monday or Sunday night, you fly straight to another tournament or another destination around the world, and you have to play again come Friday in a brand new tournament. So it's extremely difficult to do, and I think for anyone who hasn't seen the game, I know it looks extremely exciting, extremely fast paced, and it's great to watch. But to play it is also absolute misery at times. When everything's going well, it's great. When everything's going bad,
Oh,
or different things aren't going your way, it is brutal. And your legs are gone, your lungs are gone, and you still got to keep moving. There's so much space to cover, and the unfortunate thing for guys like me is kind of on the bigger side, I've lost a bit of pace. Everyone's so fast as well and such good footwork. Your head's just in a spin, but that's what makes the game so great. And you have superstars around the pitch, and that's what we lived off. But it felt we needed a real team within us, and you had to have a core group there constantly, and you had to have everyone on the same page. You couldn't have individuals going off to do their own thing. You had a real foundation, a base of a team and what we wanted to do in attack and defense. And then from there, you let the individuals go be superstars off the back of that. But you give them the platform with that team. And that's all we did last year. And it worked. And I think had we kept a similar squads and different things, I think we could have chased the top again. We could have chased it for years to come. I mean, the talent in Ireland as a whole is incredible for a small country, small population wise. The level of skill and talent in the country is class. So that's just another point to add to the whole.
yeah, yeah, yeah. This is because like I don't want to like rehash all ground, but you talk about the pressure there. I mean, how that wouldn't be beneficial for young players who want to get game time. They learn at the highest level, and you are in sevens. You are punished for a mistake more than 15s because you don't have the cover there. You make the mistake and your system breaks down or whatever. Yeah, I mean we could rehash that whole
And
the whole
you can talk about it
this
constantly, but
is it. The whole logic of it not being beneficial for 15s makes no sense. I guess Brian, then just to kind of get towards wrapping that up. For you, what would be this is a 2 point question on firstly going back on the World Rugby side of things because it's just I mean that just seems like flip-flopping decisions is obviously made the decision easier for a union like the IRFU to cut the sevens program. So for sustainability of sevens, is there a perfect format for the game? Like, could you regionalize it? For example, could the European teams play, I don't know, 3 games in Europe, the African teams play 3 in African, and do that, and then everyone comes together for a World Cup? Or is there any other formats that you think would work well on that? So that's my first one, and then the second one is, what do you think the Irish? What is the step forward for the Irish Sevens program? Will it come back, and how will that look? So I think let's stick with the World Rugby one first, if that's all right.
Yeah, I suppose at a World Rugby, it's hard because I think since COVID, the financial situation isn't there now.
Mhm.
I definitely don't agree with the answer of taking teams away. Now maybe it is, I suppose, localizing it a little bit more. And they looked at that idea. Would they kind of separate it into regions around the world, and kind of, I suppose, you're then flying maybe less teams to different venues. But I think that then takes away the whole thing from the World Series, and it is a world competition, so you want everyone playing each other. Um, it'd be great to say just get another big sponsor, another couple of big sponsors who are just happy to fork out money into it and grow the game, and to continue to host it. But a little bit from unions, I think some thriving unions, if they'd be willing to step up and maybe host tournaments in different parts, that could benefit things. Like I look around, for example, Europe. Europe is a thriving market for rugby, whether it's French, Ireland. I know there's different things around that, and not every team is going great, and there is a lot of financial difficulties. But I think something in Europe could also help the amount of European teams. Um, you have competing on the World Series means you probably have to fly less around the world, which might save it slightly. And you're generally going to get more spectators at a tournament. So that all of a sudden means you're probably making more money off it than you would be if you fly to somewhere else. I mean, South America, I think could kind of a great spot to host a tournament. I think I'm trying to say is that keep it. I think you got to keep the high level of teams, to keep an outreach. So whether that's 12 or back to the old model of 16s, I know that's extra costs of flying teams and hotels and everything like that. But then why not put tournaments in real rugby hubs? Put one or maybe 2 or 3 in Europe if you have to, if that's the main hub. Down in Australia was always good. Obviously, you keep Hong Kong. That's a thriving sevens that's been there for as long as I can ever remember, and that'll never change. That has its own market built on it. Dubai, great. It has its own tournament built around it. They've got a huge festival, and it brings so many people to it. So that's always going to stay as well. Why not then go maybe South America, where Argentina, where you're probably going to get packed out stands regardless. Might be slightly cheaper to stay and host the teams. Yeah, it might be slightly more expensive to fly, but you'll get the money back maybe off tickets. I suppose Europe is an untapped market. Africa's, yeah, it's kind of hit and miss depending how their teams are going. That just kind of depends on how they support it. But I think you've got to just go back to where rugby really thrives. Put tournaments there, let it pick up, and then from there you can always branch out into other markets. That'd be I definitely don't sit on the boards, and I definitely don't have the answers to it and make the decisions, because that's just me probably maybe short-sighted and thinking about things a little bit
No,
differently.
it's all logical. It's all logical. I
Um,
mean, if you already have an inbuilt fan base, do it there and then expand. I mean, it's just, I guess there's a drive across the sport as a whole, and it's the right thing to do to continually grow the game. But the reality of it is when you go away from where the main roots of the sport are, it does get more challenging, and you need patience for that. And maybe doing it slower makes more sense. I mean, we talk about, I mean, we talk about LA there, for example. I know it's a completely off the beaten track, but you look at someone like Alona Mayer and what her following has become. That's been more beneficial for rugby in the US than anything else in a long time. And why that's not something that translates across sevens as a whole, because it's such a marketable package, is rather mind blowing. And we touched on it there about Dublin. You do it Dublin, you could do it in Cork, you could do it anywhere. Like you could, you just got to make it an event. You've got to view it as a standalone event as part of a series. And you might lose money in the first year, but by year 5, your goal should be to be making, you know, more than enough off it. So
I think that's the
yeah.
that's the thing. Like, as in, everything's an investment, and you do have to, I suppose, as we all do in life, in a very in a very smaller bubble is you're going to have to invest in something at some point, and you're not going to see the returns off it straight away, but your expected returns off that down the line, and it's what you do to make sure that it will return is the big thing. So if you're saying that you want to host tournaments in these cities, do it, and then put everything into making it unbelievable. Like the idea to host a tournament in Madrid was bonkers. It was outside the city. There was nothing around. It made no sense. It was hard to transport fans in and out. Rugby in Spain is thriving. It's going well. Why not put it in a stadium, a smaller stadium, right in the heart of a city that's where rugby's bigger?
Barcelona. I
Yeah,
mean, just
something
look at
like
what
that.
happened with the Spanish final recently.
It's those kind of things that you're like, why not put it in real little hubs and let it grow from there? I suppose everyone always compares the one in Singapore. It's kind of a low attendance, but obviously it's the home of HSBC, the main sponsor of the Sevens. So you can almost, and they're happy with that, and you can almost kind of, I suppose, keep that one to the side because it is almost a little bit of a different scenario. But all the other ones that they don't get the fan base to, they're the ones you're really questioning. And I suppose some of those locations are extremely expensive locations as well. There's no way LA is cheap and the America's cheap. So put it in a place that, I know LA are hosting next Olympics, but put it in a place that maybe rugby's thriving more, where there's one of the MLR teams or the home base of the Olympics down in San Diego, something like that, where you can get a real bigger fan base and there's hotels and people around it that can actually stay there. In LA, you're down south of the city. There's nothing really around. Everyone has to commute to it. Everyone's driving there. That's not really what you want. You want to be a walking distance of the city. I think that's why Vancouver's so great. You're literally walking down to the stadium. That's not the biggest thriving market, but it's always a tournament that turns up. I think that's the model you have to follow on the world scale, is put it in hubs, make it grow, put superstars in front of kids and families and anyone else willing to watch, let them take off, and then from there, let it spread into what it could be.
Yeah, no, that it's almost too logical. I'd
like to say I've solved it, but I don't think it's that easy.
We need you on the board, mate. And then yeah, I guess that last question, Brian, for you. Let's make it a two-pointer. One, where do you think the Ireland Sevens program is going to go? Will it come back? Will they just try and short it in the final year before the Olympics? And two, is there any chance of opening these discussions with the IRFU and going, we will, even if as players and stakeholders source more funding to make it worthwhile, do you think there's any chance they'd be open to that?
I suppose the first point, where do I see it? I don't see it in a very good spot at the moment. I think the idea of trying to bring a group together when it comes around to Olympic qualifying and trying to qualify in Olympics just isn't going to happen. It's impossible. I mean, there's teams in Challenger Series levels below and even below that who are part-time programs, flat-out training, and they can't even get a sniff because the game's so competitive. And especially in a European market, it is so hard to qualify for the Olympics with so many teams in there being so competitive. So if that's the way they want to see it and that's the way they will go for it, it won't exist. And that's the way it's going to go. You need to build into a program. You need to be competitive or competing in regular tournaments. And suppose getting to know the game, and then you can say, I don't think it will take 10 years the same way it did the last time, but I think it would take a few years to get kind of back into the Olympic cycle. And I suppose then the second point of it, I don't think the conversations are done by any way, shape, or form. And we're trying to have the right conversations, I suppose, with the right people and get a better understanding of how this game could be brought back in a different shape, whether that means more outside of funding, more sponsorship deals, cuts in different departments of the game, less full-time, more part-time. I don't know. And I suppose those are the conversations we're still in the process of having. Senior players within the program don't want to obviously just let it die, but it's just about going through the right pathway and getting all the facts in place and getting the right ideas. And then I suppose, presenting different things and making sure. Rugby Players Ireland, who kind of take care of everything off the field with us. They're really good. They've also been very good in helping us transition and everything we need to do. I've been constantly reaching out to the guys, which is fantastic. But I suppose they're the group that really talk on behalf of us players in that environment, and they'll have the separate conversations with the IRFU in the right way, that needs to be done, and hopefully we can get more answers from that. In the short term, it doesn't look great, I suppose. We're told we wouldn't be competing in sevens too. That's meant to be in December time, and next year's Rugby Europe. So what we did this summer in regards to Rugby Europe trying to qualify didn't really matter. So that means this kind of the program's basically just finished. We thought we might get a couple more games out of it, but we're kind of saying there's no point. So I suppose the case is if we know next summer's not going to happen, for whatever team might be in place, it's probably chasing it the following year after that and trying to make sure there's a team again competing in Europe first, in the Rugby Europes, and then from there build into whatever might fall after that. And I suppose the real goal of it is to make a program or bring a program back that is competitive again, but that also has the foundation in place to last for longevity as well. No, I don't think anyone would rather see it start up again and then something like this happen again. So how that happens and how that looks, I'm not entirely sure of, and hopefully we get those answers, whether it's in the coming weeks or coming months, and kind of start putting a plan in place. I don't see it as the game being completely done in Ireland, but at the moment it's very hard to see how it looks and how they see it as being successful. And I think that's the real bridge to kind of cross and make sure that there is a program in place. It's not just there for the sake of being a program. It's there to go compete, drive success, be excellent all around the world, and show again what an Irish jersey can do, in different environments. And I think that's the way we want it to go. But I don't know how long we'll take to get there. I'd love to say that come LA, there's a team competing again, and hopefully qualifies. At the moment, it looks very unlikely, but then it's maybe a case of chasing Brisbane 4 years after that. That seems a very, very long way down the line. It's kind of hard to imagine, but I think it needs to start with getting the right understanding of how a program wants to be looked. And I suppose what we've spoken about the whole time is it that development tool? How can we use players the right way? Can we get an understanding of that? And then from there, build that foundation to then have that little program within it, that core group, and then from there, thrive it on and push on into whatever it could be. There's no way, or there's nothing saying it can't be the same way it has been now, but I think it needs more of the foundation, the bedrock of it first, to then make it more successful down the line and longevity of it.
That's brilliant. Bryan Mollen, thank you so much for your time on that. That's yeah, fascinating. And yeah, I'm sure whoever's watching this has really enjoyed listening to your points on that. So thank you so much for your time on that, mate.
Thanks for having me, and I appreciate it.
No worries.